A very pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers. Welcome to Let's Talk. Let's Talk is a program sponsored by the South Leeward Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. We believe in discussing issues that impact church members, issues that are not always spoken about in the open. This afternoon, we are here discussing the issue of tithing. And lots of questions have been asked over the years. What should we tithe? Last week we started this discussion, in fact, and it was a very intriguing discussion. We gave a general overview of tithing and what is involved in tithing. We have some unanswered questions. Questions that viewers asked that we were not able to get to. We hope to be able to answer those today, along with discussing the issues of getting into some specifics, exactly what we tithe and how we go about doing that. Before I introduce our guests, I want to invite you, our viewers and our listeners, those who are on Second Advent Radio, to bow your heads with me as we pray. Father, we thank you for the privilege and opportunity to share with our friends, those who are viewing on any of our streaming platforms, SLC Adventist, SLC Church Channel, and Facebook, and those listening on Second Advent, be it at the assigned frequency of 101.5 FM or through any of its streaming platforms. Wherever around the world people are listening at this time, we pray that you will be with them all and grant that as we discuss this very important subject, that clarity and understanding will be had. Be with our guests, grant them wisdom to be able to articulate efficiently as they seek to make clear to your people the biblical principles of tithing. Grant us again your peace and your presence in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, friends, we are grateful for your presence with us. I do want to let you know that if you are listening on SLC Adventist, or you are viewing on Facebook or on listening on Second Advent Radio, and you want to tell your friends about how they can get in touch and listen to a broadcast that they may miss, the place to find past programs, ideal place to find past programs is on SLC Church Channel. You can go there, SLC Church Channel. In fact, we would like you to subscribe to SLC Church Channel because we do have a series of past programs there. And you may, at the same time, pick up other training events that the church does have from time to time. Well, this afternoon, we do have with us, again, two very special guests. They were here with us last week, and I just want to briefly highlight them. We have with us the treasurer of the Caribbean Union, and Dr. Bertie Henry, Pastor Bertie Henry. Sorry, I'm giving you something that's good there, Pastor Bertie Henry, and we have Dr. Yvette Peters. Dr. Yvette Peters is the treasurer of the South Caribbean Conference, has had a long and distinguished career in the public service and comes with a wealth of experience. Pastor Bertie Henry has worked with the church practically all his life. He has worked as an administrator at the Davis Memorial Hospital. He has worked as a business manager at the University of Southern Caribbean. He has worked as a treasurer in his Caribbean Conference. He is now the treasurer of the Caribbean Union. We're delighted to have you both as we continue this very intriguing discussion. Let me pause to give you a moment just to say a word of greeting. Let's start with Dr. Peters and then we go to Pastor Henry.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Those of you who were with us last week, I said it was a pleasure for me to be here last week, and it's even more pleasure for me to be here this week because I saw we got some questions that are quite interesting. And as we embark on providing information, I trust that we may not be able to clear everything up, but to a great extent, what God has impressed on us, may we be able to satisfy your curiosity or your understanding. God bless each of you who are viewing and listening to us at this time. Thanks again, Pastor, for having me as a guest on this program.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Pastor Henry?
Yes, I want to shout out and greet all our viewers. Happy to be, and privileged, I should say, to be sharing this platform with Dr. Peters, my good friend. And we hope that this evening's encounter will be one of inspiration, and God will bless us and those who listen. We are happy to be part of this, and I dare say truthfully, that I'm privileged and feel a sound pleasure in being here today. So thank you very much, Dr. Greene, for this privilege.
You're most welcome. Last week we had quite a bit of feedback from the program. There are many persons who told me that they enjoyed the program, and they'll be listening this week. Well, we want to begin the discussion with the whole matter of, last week we were talking about the reference to Malachi chapter 3. That's how we ended. Malachi implies that to withhold the tithe is to rob God. We spoke about the matter of robbing from God. But I want to make a second reference, Matthew 23 and the verse 23, because in this reference, we have Jesus making reference. Some people like to think that tithing is an Old Testament concept or principle, but in Matthew chapter 23 and verse 23, we have Jesus making reference to the matter of tithing, and what he said has implications. So I'm going to read Matthew 23 and verse 23, just as a start here. Jesus said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees," I'm reading from the New King James Version, "scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone." So here Jesus is saying it was appropriate, right? It was required for them to tithe. And he made specific reference to them tithing mint and anise and cumin. And he said, you should do that, but then you have left some other matters undone. This is an affirmation of the principle of tithing by Jesus. For those who say that, well, yes, there was tithing in the Old Testament, but we believe in New Testament. What are the implications here for Christians as we consider the statement of Jesus here? Yes, Elder Bertie, you can go ahead.
Yes. Well, the thing about it that Jesus referred to it because, and you realize he didn't say much more about it because it was a well-established practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't need to go into it, but he said, listen, this you're doing, yes, but don't think that just doing this, you'd be saved. You have to do the other things as well. And that cements and makes it clear of his affirmation of that practice. Of course, he also talked about in the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Pharisee felt he was so righteous because he paid tithe and do those things. Jesus said, listen, and that's in Luke 18. Yes, he was doing all the right things, but his heart was not in the right place. Again, Jesus is acknowledging the practice. It was very prevalent and widespread in those days. So Jesus is again acknowledging it. And I think the both instances gives us his perspective on the importance of this practice.
That is so true. That is very correct. We have a few questions from last week that we're going to get into in a little while. But first, I want to for us to look at some specifics. And you both realize how quickly 1 hour goes by, because last week when I said we had 5 more minutes, you thought we had 30 minutes. So we're going to jump into this thing. We shared a lot last week. We want to build on that, and we want to look at some specifics. One of the questions that is asked pretty often, do I tithe my gross or my net salary? I want to ask Dr. Peters to respond to this. People ask from time to time, do I tithe my gross or my net?
The answer in just one short sentence is you should tithe your gross salary. The Bible speaks about providing or giving back 1/10 of your increase. Of course, in the old days, the method of was more bartering. So you had your grain, you had your animals, and so on. And it was of your increase, whatever that increase may represent. And many people think that they should tithe their net income and not the gross income. But the gross income, whether you pay tax out of it, whether the government takes its tax out of it, really your gross income is what should be tithed. Bearing in mind that in some countries they are not taxed. They probably have some other system of financing their economy. And in those countries, you pay 10% of the tithe. The Christians who are there, whether you're a Seventh-day Adventist or there are other denominations which believe in the tithing. So it's really tithing, giving back to God 10% of your increase, and your increase is really your gross income.
Not last week, before you add your bits, Pastor Henry, last week, we made reference to the fact that the tithe belongs to God, that it is holy to the Lord. It is significant to me that God says it's holy, and that which is holy, we identified last week as something sacred, and you do not have the right to tamper with it. So God seems to have already made the determination of what belongs to him, and he is just giving us the opportunity to prove our faithfulness. And it is interesting that when we read in Malachi, he says, "Prove me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts." You know, so demonstrate your faithfulness to me. That seems rather very significant to me. Elder Purdy.
Very significant, very, very significant. And it's the faith. And I couldn't think of doing more tax than paying the government first before God. Paying the government more than you would return to God. When he is the source of your strength, your health, and he provides so much blessings for you. I mean, life itself, it comes from God. And so that gratefulness, that gratitude, that recognition of his sovereignty, that is why the tithe is returned to him. And yes, it is a demonstration of faith, because as you receive that, you know that, okay, God, this is yours. And then you begin to look at how I'm going to fulfill my other needs and obligations with the balance, knowing full well that God will make that do for you more than the 100%. And that is something we just have to have faith.
Now we want to take a few questions that were asked last week here and there, and I want to start with this one. Last week we indicated that there was the issue of bringing you all the tithe into the storehouse, and we established the fact that the storehouse is where the administration of the work is done. And somebody posed a question, and I'm looking at it here because there are a number of questions, and I want to make sure that we do respond to the questions that our viewers are asking, because this program is designed to provide information to our viewers and listeners. So the matter of the storehouse, the individual is asking, can independent ministries be included in the storehouse? Now, the matter of independent ministries is an important one. It is an interesting question, because I know of various individuals who say they have a ministry, they send out newsletters, and they're asking people, they say this is a worthy cause, send your tithes. Elder Pastor Bertie Henry, You are the treasurer of the Caribbean Union. Your word counts a lot. So let's hear you respond to this matter of this storehouse and whether we should include independent ministries. If I choose to send my tithe to somebody who claims they have a ministry and they need support, as opposed to returning it to the church.
First of all, Dr. Greene, permit me to just talk to the whole concept of independent ministry. Because what we often refer to as independent ministry is not really independent ministry. You see, an independent ministry, as a matter of fact, the church and its inspiration and its admonition and collective understanding gives sanction to independent ministries, approves them. There are specific guidelines also for independent ministries. 3ABN, for instance, is an independent ministry. We have some health facilities that are independent. They're run by Adventist individuals who support the mission of the church. So these independent ministries also, they return tithe.
And we want to call these elder supportive ministries, which I think might be a better term to use in this instance. They're independent in the sense that they're not, they have their own administration, etc., but they are supportive. Yes,
they're not paid by the church.
Mm-hmm.
They're not paid from the church funds or anything of the sort, but they generate their own income from donations and other means. They very often they have somebody who's there who has some financial resources also and helps that ministry along. And then the ministry picks up by itself as individuals pledge, give donation or sponsor projects and so on. But these, if you have a ministry, because here these ministries are set up to support the mission of the church. It does not take away from the church. It supports the mission of the church. It lines up, it aligns its teachings and everything else with the church, recognizing the church as God's ordained body, as the apple of his eye. So in that sense, as soon as you have a ministry that's set up apart from what God has ordained as the church, as he recognized, given Bible prophecy, our understanding how the church was raised up, it's God inspired. Once you have a ministry now set up outside of that and says, okay, we are now the storehouse, you know that is not a real ministry. There's a test for its genuineness when it begins to say that claims to be a storehouse. And secondly, the teachings line up, as I said, with the church, the church's beliefs. And so just imagine the confusion that can come about if different individuals just get up and say, okay, I think I want to start off in this way, and this is now a new storehouse. This is now a new storehouse, and you may have storehouses just blocking up everywhere. And remember that our church is connected. The tithe that goes to the local mission or conference, some of it heads straight up to the general conference office. So it's one body, actually, one storehouse. And now it's because of the complexity and the spread of the church worldwide, its global nature, that the offering is being, and the tithe and offering being picked up at the local field and conference. The structure is set up for this purpose, to facilitate the giving.
I like the point you made, Elder, at the beginning. I mean, all your points there, but I just want to highlight what you said earlier about these quote unquote ministries, supportive independent ministries, that we have guidelines with respect to how they function and that they are approved by the organization. They work in conjunction with the organization, not at variance with the organization. And such ministries do not ask people to return tithe to them because they respect and understand the structure of the church. So I think that's very important. And whoever asks the question, it's an important question because We do have lots of individuals who would want you to believe that they're working alongside the church when they're in effect working at variance with the church. Anybody who is begging you to send their tithe as opposed to returning it through the natural channels that are established are not really working along with the church.
That's right. That's right. I recall being at a GC meeting, and we had Dr. I'm trying to remember his name right now. He wrote this book, Proof Positive. But he had a health facility set up, and he has been doing powerful witnessing. And even at our GC meetings, he came over there and he did devotions for the week, and he was able to share some of the experiences he had with individuals struggling. And he was talking about the effect of music on the mind, and really mind-blowing by itself. But supporting the church in every way possible. And of course, when somebody through that ministry accepts Jesus, then the church itself is the one who steps in, the pastor of that area, and receives the member into membership. So they're not interested in forming their own membership or anything of the sort. They're just interested in spreading the gospel, supporting the mission of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Very correct indeed. Well, let's look at another question. What if I have a business? Should the business return tithes? There are many persons who ask from time to time. I return my tithes, but what about the business? Should the business return tithes?
Before you go forward, I just come into my head. Neil Medley is the guy's name. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
Dr. Peters. Sorry about that.
Dr. Peters, you're responding to this one?
Yes, I will. In the case of personal income, the gross income is we use 10% of the gross income. In the case of a business, the business should return tithes as well, but the income, the tithe is returned after the expenses of the business is deducted, because at the end of the day, that is really the income of the business. Whatever is required to run the business, if it's the pay maintenance and that type of thing, is deducted from the income or the revenue, I should say, of the organization, and tithe is paid on that. Of course, if you have persons in there, like the owners, and they have their personal expenses being incurred by the business, that should be taken out. That should not be part of the whole calculation, because then it becomes personal and they are to pay tithes on that. That should not be deducted as an expense. If it's used for their personal, like a loan, I wouldn't say a loan. You know, some people have their personal businesses and they take money from it to, pay for whatever. If it's to send their children to school and that type of thing, that is more personal income versus the business money being used to run the business or to keep the business going.
So I tell people, and you may want to, either of you can comment on this, but I tell people, listen, if you have a business, if it's a personal business, you're running the business yourself, you may want to pay yourself a salary for your inputs in that building. From your salary, you return your tithe, because that is your income. And at the end of the year, when you do your business computation to determine the income for the business, then you return tithe on the profits of the business.
Certainly, Pastor Greene, it's not like every month, because a lot of businesses, while they may do a monthly statement, sometimes depending on the type of how you do your accounting, they may not know whether the company really made a profit or not until the end of the accounting period. for
Correct.
that particular business. Some may be to the end of the fiscal year, some may be to the middle of the year, some may be to a quarter of the year, and some some may choose to do it by the quarter, as the case may be. But it's really when at some point in time when you can determine that this business has brought in a profit, and after you deduct your expenses from the income that generated, it will definitely be the profit of the business.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. Your profit or your surplus, whatever you want to call it. But yes.
All right. Now, there was another question about how you, so I think we answered that already, but let's get into something rather very interesting. If I retire and I receive a pension from Social Security, or its equivalent, in some places they maybe use a different term, do I tithe the pension? I get this question a lot. I could tell you how I respond to it, but I want to hear your input. So individuals who have come to the end of their work life and they're getting a pension from with Social Security, retirement, investment, etc. And they ask, should I tithe?
Quick and easy. Yes. That's an income, a regular income coming to you. God has blessed that, bless you with that. And every month that's your increase. That is so easy. And that individual also would recognize and benefit from the blessings of God in doing that.
Now, some individuals argue that well, they made this like in some countries they deduct monies from their salaries to go towards this pension plan, and because of that they think that they should not return
Great point.
tithe on it.
Great point. However, any retirement plan, whatever is deducted, some cases are, people contribute to that. That money is then invested and generates interest, which is part of that. How would you now sit down with God and slice that out? Say, God, I think this thing has gained so much. And furthermore, you don't know at what point. I mean, it just makes sense because you're receiving this as now an income. This is now your new income. The retirement, your pension you're receiving. This is now your new income. And this could be regarded as, this is your income. So God's blessing to you, recognizing again that God owns you and everything you have, even this income. And so you tithe it. It's just natural.
I tell people, why go to, mathematically you may want be able to sit down and compute, how much I contribute versus how much my company contributed on my behalf, for how long,
how much interest generated,
and how much interest generated, and that would be a laborious process. But why be so exact with God? I mean, you cannot lose when you are faithful to God. If God were to charge us for the air we breathe and the energy that he gave us, etc., then we would be in a lot of trouble. So we ought not to be stingy with him.
Yes, that's right.
And I noticed that somebody asked recently, by that I mean, since we started the program today, when the bank gives interest on savings, we expected to return tithe on that. So you have an investment, let's say you buy, even your savings, or you purchase bonds or stocks or government bills, etc. You get an interest, and the person is now asking, should I think the question would be, is it an increase?
Yes, it is.
So we return tithe on our increase. So that means,
that's right.
Yeah, so I think that clarifies that particular issue there. Here we have, before I go on to other questions from our viewers, the matter of selling a house, or let's say, in this pandemic, some persons were retrenched and they receive what we commonly refer to as compensation, or what you may want to say settlement. So an individual may have been working in a company for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, as the case may be. And because of whatever, the company is downsizing, and it decides, okay, we're going to settle with you, you go home. And so they get this lump sum. And the question is, do I return tithe on this? If I sell my house and I get so much money for it, do I return tithe on it? Can you both work us through? These are questions that viewers have that they want answers to. So let's separate them. First, Dr. Peters, maybe. So I worked for a company for the last 15 and a half years, and somebody decides to buy that company. And based on the local laws, you may have to pay off the workers and start them over. What do I do with that gratuity, with that, whatever term you use to refer to it?
Let me just, when you say what do you do with...
In terms of tithing,
That's the employee who receives the lump sum?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, well, again, it's an increase. Now, whether you pay it right away or you're going to have it dispensed, you put in it somewhere and you have it dispensed on a monthly basis as though you are working, because really the amount that you are paid there is to cover a period of time. They will calculate, okay, if you had stayed with us for the next 6 years, this is what we would have paid you over that period of time. But the thing is, the command is bring all your tithes into the storehouse. It didn't say bring it this week, next week, the week after. It's to bring it. And for me, I will encourage the person to pay the tithe on what they have received at that point in time. As I said, another view can be taken is that this is for covering me for income over a 2-3 year period, as the case may be. If I am not working or whether I'm working or not, this is how the money would have been dispensed to me. But the safer thing to do to me is to pay it as you receive it at that point in time. The tithes on it.
All right. Alberto, you want to add to that?
Well, I would, whether that payment represents 2 years pay or whatever, I receive it now.
Yep.
And so this is an increase that I receive now. How I would dispense of it over the next period, a year, 2 years, or whatever time, it's up to me. But as of now, I receive this full amount, and I would tithe it immediately and return to God that portion that is his. And he could bless me in so many ways in the process. He could bless that amount that I have left. He would definitely do that. In addition to that, he can get me engaged in another job quickly. I mean, he could bless me in so many ways. So I want to respect and honor him immediately, and not confuse myself going down the road. That I receive this now means the total increase I receive now, and I just calculate the tithe and return it to God immediately.
I think we ought to be wise enough not to put ourselves in temptation's way.
Certainly.
That is also so correct.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, let's look at another question that came in last week. As we're talking about tithe here, many times we have been asked to return a double tithe. This person says, is this a divine mandate? That's just a question from one of our viewers. Was asked last week. This matter of double tithe. I've heard the term myself, and I suppose what people may be referring to when they say that is a second 10%. But
yes,
let's hear you. Go ahead.
Well, God says the 10% is his. And whatever you give above that, that is your giving, your offering to God. If that offering is equivalent to your tithe, there's no problem. It's accepted, you're still blessed. But what God is requiring is 1/10. He did not stipulate exactly how much the offering should be. And we give God, out of the heart of gratitude, and we give cheerfully. Lord, we're happy to return this. I don't want to make it rigid and legit and almost creating a burden on myself. God, I'm giving you this. And even beyond that, I'm still going to do some additional things that can contribute to your cause. So it's just 1/10 that God is requiring. He says, return that to him. Anything above that is an offering. Even if it's equal to a tithe, it's not a double tithe as such.
In other words, the tithe, because it's stipulated by God and he says it's holy, then it is used in specific ways.
The 10% is holy, yes.
Yes, and maybe it's a good idea for us to segue a bit into the uses of the tithe. But before we do so, it looks like Dr. Peters wanted to add something to that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to express as well, though, that if you decided that you are going to give in excess of 10%, the 10% to me is given. That's no, you don't have to work that out again. He asked for 10%, as Pastor Henry said, and it's 10% he's expecting. My thing, though, if you go and make a vow with the Lord now, I am going to give you 10% extra, 5% extra. I think as a Christian, we need to be very careful in how we meet the vow that we have taken or adhere to it. And it should not be for selfish reasons. We have the example of Ananias and Sapphira in the Bible. When their conditions in their mind changed, they wanted to change the vow or the commitment that they had made to the Lord. So I think we need to be careful there. Yes, you have it's 10%, but some people decide, okay, Lord, I promise you I will give you 5% of my income as well, and that is my offering, and I vow to that. And then something come up that is more of a selfish reason, and they move away from that vow or forget the vow altogether.
Just for clarity, just so that nobody listening gets the wrong impression, we are saying that the tithe is 10%.
Yep.
But the Bible also speaks to the offering. The offering is not stipulated, but in Malachi, where God says, will a man rob God? And when the question was asked, wherein have we robbed thee? The answer was in tithes and offerings. So the tithe is one thing, the offering is another. The tithe is 10%. I think Pastor Henry made reference earlier to the fact that the offering is given as a gratitude to God's blessings on your life. So if you are grateful to God for waking you up every morning, for giving you health and strength, for giving you obedient children, for giving you a sound mind, for giving you intelligence, your job, etc., you have to show your gratefulness to him by returning an offering. And rightly, some persons, in some congregations, I like to tell the members, in terms of balancing the church budget, what is required to balance the budget. Everybody makes a choice in terms of how much they're giving, but it really does not speak good when you are returning $500 tithe and $1 offering. That sounds like you're not grateful at all to God.
That's
for what
true.
you're
Very true. Very true. Very true. Very true.
I see sometimes some persons put $4.98 for tithe and $2 for offering, just to round it up.
Wow.
That's not what God wants.
Wow.
No.
But let's look at the other issue of, if I sell my house, what do I tithe? Pastor Henry, you.
Okay. I just wanted to round off the last point to say that somebody can decide, and I like the point Dr. Peters made, of making a vow. If you make a vow to God, then you should be keeping that vow. Very important, whatever vow that is. And I can say to my church, I'm vowing to God to support this church budget by giving such amount. It could be a specific amount. It could be a percentage. And I keep that. But again, that is my offering. And I'm not even limited to that. If I say I'm going to return, I give you so much for the budget covenant, I'm still free to give an offering whenever I go to church. Otherwise, if you sell your house, you have to look at that as a business transaction. It is a business transaction. So that you have put invested into this house, this structure, however you did. If you built it yourself, if you bought it, whatever way, then you can look at, well, the market price is very subjective. But if you get a valuation of the house, and you can tithe whatever you get in excess of that valuation. You can also calculate it differently, because I know some people they're not selling their house to make a profit as such. Maybe there is just want to give it over to somebody else, or they want to sell it below the price just to meet somebody's pocket. Then you have to then calculate what amount you can calculate and give God and recognize, because this is God's asset. God has blessed you with this. However you look at this, God's blessing you in this, and recognizing it. Maybe you have invested in this. This is your investment. And based on that, now the value of it has gone up. And I mean, anybody who owns a house would know that if I put out, maybe I took a loan for, if it's in Trinidad here, then maybe $1 million, 1.5, and I bought a house or so. By the time that time comes around, it's the cost or the value is so much more. I can sell that house. I can decide how much I can tithe by selling that house.
So you simply work out your profits and you tithe the profits.
Yes, I can work that out. Some people may decide I can tithe the whole amount. No problem. I think there's no problem with that. That is fine. If you're selling the house, you have money now, and you want to tithe that whole 100% of the cost of the sale value of the house, no problem.
I mean, if I take a mortgage to build a house, or I build a house out of pocket, what I invest and what the difference between my investment and what I'm selling them.
And what I sell it for, that's the difference. That's where it's tight. That's what required.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to be more generous than that and say, I'm doing 100%, I wouldn't stop them.
Yeah. Dr. Peters, you were going to comment.
Yeah, but I'm saying that I'm wondering if we should consider the amount we pay in that excess, if we tighten the 100%, if that is really tithing, or there's a certain amount that is tithe and the rest is an offering.
Yeah, but you have to calculate it. You can calculate that.
I think it's a good question, because
very good.
Especially when we consider the use of the tithe, we should not mix up tithe and offering. So it's a good point, because
very good point.
Yeah. Let's stay on this subject, because somebody's asking, what if I have a house on rent? Now, so this is an investment project. I build this house and I'm renting it. The rent, the person says, let me see if I find the question. Give me a second here. The person says, I have a house on rent. How do you return tithe when the rent money goes straight to the mortgage? I see Dr. Peters.
I just love the audience you have, man.
Yes.
But let me ask, because if I put 300,000 in this house, right? I know we have different currencies. So if I put 300,000 in this house,
Yeah.
as my investment, I mean, one way to deal with it is if I'm paying the mortgage, then I'm going to clear my expenses. And once I clear my expenses, I can begin to tithe anything that comes. That's one way to deal with it. Or you could say, if the mortgage payment is $2,000 a month, and that's what I rent the house for, then that's a break-even situation. But if I'm paying $2,000 a month and I'm renting the house for $3,000, another way to look at it is that I'm getting $1,000 profit. So there are different ways to look at it. Are you going to clear your mortgage, deal with all of your expense first, or if you are getting income beyond what the mortgage payment is? And then there's a difference now if you build the house out of pocket and you're not paying any mortgage.
Well, you also got to look at the scenarios where, because if you invest in a house and you're receiving the monthly rent, the rent may be a little more than what you're paying on a mortgage. Remember that you should have that account, a mortgage account. Maybe you have the bank doing automatic deductions. You should allow some months of mortgage payment to accumulate in that account. You can pay tithe on a regular basis there. You can pay tithe also when your mortgage is finished and you pay tithe on the whole amount you're receiving as rent. But yes, you can work with different methods of calculating what it is you have to pay on that house.
Somebody commented that we need to spend more time on this in the church. well, certainly any pastor who is listening would understand that a lot of the issues that we raise here on Let's Talk, they can always take and expand on them. We're laying some foundation. We can't discuss everything in 1 hour, but it's to provide, some general guidelines. Dr. Peters, you wanted to make a comment?
With respect to, I agree with the comments that went before with respect to paying tithe on rental income. The only thing I think though is that many persons, church members at that, do not look at the rental of a property as income. I think they focus more on the part that they are paying a mortgage on the house, and therefore that money is to clear off the mortgage. And we have some as well, a few I will think in that direction, who just never think about the mortgage side or the expense side of this investment, and they just pay a tithe in their mind on the full amount of the rental income that they receive. So the church may need some education where that is concerned.
All right. Then we have time to deal with here.
Yes.
I want to, there were a few questions that came in last week. We're going to go quickly on this. We only have about 10 more minutes. So let's see how direct we can be with these answers. Somebody's asking, who else beside gospel ministers are legitimate recipients of tithe money? Elder Henry, this sounds like a question for you. Who else beside gospel ministers are legitimate recipients of tithe money? I think they're asking about how we use the tithe. And maybe we can just deal with that.
Besides pastors, evangelists, ministers, and so on. We support world missions. Also, there are some soul winning support personnel. You have personnel in the offices, conference and mission office, operating expense. Remember, these are administrative expense. You cannot have a number of workers out there preaching the gospel and working to spread this gospel and to shepherd folk and so on, and don't have an administrative arm and a number of plans coming together, because we have a lot more complex church now. So the administrative arm, evangelism, missions, all of these benefit from tithe. We have also subsidies to specific activities. Some activities are specified. You may have a Bible or religion teacher in school. That support personnel. You have things that can be used for evangelism and equipment and so on. Those also can be legitimately be financed by tithe.
Okay, well, Dr. Peters, go ahead. You look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say some part of education is supported, and when I say education, I always talk about the education staff, not the full education, not all the teachers and all the workers, I should say, in the education system, but there's an allocation towards the education system.
Yes, that's the point I was going to make, that a percentage of the primary school teacher and the percentage of the secondary school teaching staff, because we understand that they do a ministry.
They do ministry, that's right.
In terms of exemplifying Christ, the whole matter of faith and learning. Now, so Elder Pastor Henry, when the tithe goes to the church, as quickly as you can, when the tithe goes to the church, what happens to it?
Well, I guess that could have gone to Yvette first, but no problem. I take it. He receives it directly.
No problem.
But
no
yeah,
problem either.
When it goes to the church, it goes through the full structure of the organization. It comes from the conference and mission, and it goes to a 10%. You see, the church itself in its body also observes that tithing system. And even churches, the organization, sense and feels the blessing of God as they do this. So the conference or mission, they give 10% of their funds to the division, 10% to the union, but because this helps the structure of the organization. So we have that, and they also support our tertiary education institution, and in their own field, primary and secondary schools. So it goes to the primary and secondary school in your particular field, to the tertiary institution in our region, to the union itself, operating, helping its workers, trying to collaborate the work of evangelism throughout our fields, to the general conference or division. So that is how the tithe is used.
So the local church passes on 100%
to the conference,
to the
Storehouse.
conference.
Yes.
And the conference from its tithe. Now here's where Dr. Peters may want to come in. I'm still thinking my years in the treasury, but Dr. Peters is there, so let her go ahead.
Okay, so when it comes to the conference, Pastor Bertie mentioned this before, and I respect that we don't have much time, that, we send the percentage that goes to the union and also to the
Division.
The division via the union. We give a certain percentage, and of course this is based on what the committee has assigned and agreed to, and some of the money we put it into, if it's community services, publishing, and all the different arms of the church do receive money out of what we get. Of course, different percentages that are distributed to these various departments.
We don't have much time at all, but I do want to say this, because some persons believe that, conferences are rich, they have a lot of money. So I don't want to make the point. that every tithe dollar that gets to the conference, 10% goes to the union, 10% to the division, 6% to USC, 1% to publishing, 0.5% to IATS. You know, when you check all of that, before we start to deal with any
28%.
real expense, we are talking almost 50%.
Yeah.
So I think that point needs to be made
Yeah,
clear.
that is close to 30%, and then you have another 50% going to your ministers, your pastors, and so on. And they work.
So and evangelism budgets,
Evangelism and
operational
other departments.
expenses,
Yes.
etc.
Family
Now,
life, community services.
now, very quickly with these few questions, I think these are important questions from viewers, and I would really want us to respond to this. So let me ask this quickly. Why does the church or conference require a percentage of the local church offering? Is the tithe not enough, or is it not being managed properly? I think the person is speaking there to 60-20-20. So they're saying the conference gets a tithe. Why do they want offering?
Well, the tithe is for a specific, we cannot use the tithe for anything else more than what God has instructed us to use it for, right? The tithe is to maintain the, as in the olden days, it was the Levite tribe. So it's really for the gospel, per se. I'm not saying the other things are not of the gospel. Anything that is non-tithe, so we have things like we have to set up bill, we have to keep our buildings going, we have to, we want to build schools, whatever it is. These are non-tithe activities. So that is what the offering is used for. We don't use the tithe to do what, to conduct or to pay for non-tithe activities.
I just want to add another significant portion of that is the missions offering, because half of that amount that comes in terms of the 60-20-20, that second 20%, which is a missions offering, when we consider, you know, I was sharing with my congregation today that we have members in Russia. And when we looked at 31,500 members in Russia, when you look at the size of Russia, you would realize that's not very many members. Trinidad and Tobago has more Seventh Adventists than that. So, and Russia is one of the largest countries in the world. The magnitude of the work that remains to be done, it's important that we support missionaries in these places. When we talk about the 1040 window, that portion of the world between 10 and 40 degrees north latitude, where it is such a challenge to preach the gospel, where more people don't know about Jesus than those who know about him. You know, the case for having missionary endeavors is so important, and that missions offering is crucial, but we don't have time to go into all
we have more than 750 missionaries out there scattered in different places. You have other agencies like the Hope Channel, like ADRA, offering goes to all of those. Well,
indeed. So I mean, we are out of time. We are out of time, but I really want to thank you all for your tremendous contribution. And for those of you who are listening, you know, you can always talk to your pastor about expanding on these principles. Let me say that next week we are going to be talking about mental health. We're going to be dealing with myths about mental health. In fact, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about mental health. First week, we're talking about myths about mental health. Second week, we're talking about how do we distinguish between mental health and demon possession? When do we know a person is demon possessed versus when they're having a mental health challenge? And the third week, we want to consider mental health issues among church workers. So we do have a competent team of professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, pastors, who will be sharing with us for the next 3 weeks. You don't want to miss that at all. My concept of mental health was tremendously impacted during my developmental stages. You know, there was a time, I'll just say, growing up as a little boy, we used to use the term crazy. And once you spoke about somebody having a mental health issue, you conclude, oh, that person is crazy. We want to be able to correct those kinds of things and broaden your understanding. So we invite you, all of our viewers, all of our listeners, to join us next week at 3 p.m. Next week, 3 p.m. every Sabbath afternoon. Let's Talk comes with something exciting, something relevant. And so please remember to tell a friend. I want to thank Dr. Peters and Pastor Henry for sharing with us. I want to give you half a second to give your final comments. Go ahead, Pastor Henry.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. I still believe that God blesses us, and there's so many experiences and stories we could have related to, but time did not permit. But God is showing that even today, He is blessing individuals who faithfully carry out His word. Thank you very much. Please remember to shout out my 3 friends there in Antigua. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Dr. Peters. I'll do that for sure. I'm sure they're listening.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again for inviting me to be on this platform and to participate in this very meaningful discussion. I'm sorry we didn't have all the time to answer all the questions and to provide more information. But again, I still believe, like Pastor Henry, that God is blessing us and He's keeping us, and He will keep us once we are faithful to Him. Thank you again.
You're most welcome to all of our viewers. Our Evangelism Field School resumes now. It is on Zoom. It is not on YouTube. It is not on Second Advent Radio. It is on Zoom. So if you want to join and you don't have the link, give your pastor a call. They will get that to you. God bless you and see you.